Welcome back, Third Phase Moon. We are able to share with you now the full interview. Thanks to Dr. J, the entire insight from Emery Smith and the Secret Space Force. Listen up.
Who is the most advanced race in our galaxy, and what can they do?
Well, in our galaxy and in this dimension, just so you know, you're talking about a race. Now let's talk about. He did say race, right? What is the most advanced race?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, first let's talk about races, and I'll get into the question because, I just got done filming here at the Conscious Life Expo for 4 days, and it was a great time. Thank you guys for all that came out, and it was just such a wonderful time to be surrounded by a bunch of conscious, beautiful people. And I do have a lot of times. I get a lot of fans and people coming up and followers that are like, hey, my name is so-and-so and I'm Pleiadian, and my name is so-and-so and I'm Arcturan. And when they say this, I get it because they have an affinity for that lineage because it probably dominates their DNA. And so I believe them. I do believe them. But what the scope for me as a scientist, when you're saying, well, I'm from the Pleiades or I'm from, Orion, well, these star systems have, trillions of stars in them and trillions of planets. So what I'm getting at is we break it down in the project into sectors. So, yeah, the Pleiades is a sector. Then the next number is a sector within that sector. And a sector within that sector, a galaxy within that galaxy, and, a planet, a solar system within that solar system, and planets and so forth. So we break it down that way. And it's fascinating because it's like here on Earth, we're such a beautiful mosh pit of many different races. So to say you're from Earth, but, are you from Earth and you're European and African and Asian, and, we have such a diverse amount of races because everyone's intermingling here on the planet. And, we're changing our genetics and our races as we evolve. And the same thing's been going on in space forever and ever and ever. So you have to understand, it's very rare that, you can have a 100% someone from the star system of Arcturus because they're made up of many different races from around the universe. Now, I do have an affinity, of course, for the Orion constellation and the Arcturans and the Pleiadians and Cassiopeia and some others, but they're a mixture of race, and they all kind of do have certain attributes about them. Some are good at science, some are good at consciousness, some are more empath and emotional. Others are really good at being soldiers and defense systems, and some are more on the attack side and tactical. So it's an interesting question, and I don't see one definitive race because we're all made up of so many different genetic forms and races from around the universe. And that's the best way I could say that. I think they're all amazing because they all have amazing attributes to them, and so do we as humans. We're so resilient. We keep going. We don't give up. We are a virus that just does not stop in a good way. I'm saying that. I just hope we turn it around and make the right choices moving forward.
I agree. I definitely hope so too. I remember Dan Aykroyd when he was recorded by David Sarita, and at the end of that 2-hour interview, when David Sarita asks him what's the one thing he worries about, essentially, to break it down to one thing, and Dan Aykroyd says, I want to know if we make it. 300 years from now, do we make it or do we kill ourselves? And that's something that I worry too, because we're playing with technologies that literally can wipe us off the face of this planet and wipe other species, genomes, and other types of life forms on this planet. So again, and I also want to piggyback of what you're talking about, the different sectors and races using different DNA. For instance, like the Zetas, the Zeta Reticulus, don't they routinely come and take our DNA and merge it with theirs too?
Well, I mean, all the species have our DNA. It's not just the Zeta Reticuli. There's always a harvesting going on. A lot of the deals that were made back in the day with the presidents and of many countries with different ET races had to do with allowing them to come here and, take samples of tissues and samples of plant life and animal life to preserve it and to enhance it and to do whatever in exchange for technology. Now, we kind of got too smart for our pants at some point and went back on those contracts and started shooting down extraterrestrials and killing them. And it wasn't like a joint effort. There was a lot of these deals being made in Germany and in the United States. So not everyone was on the same page. And then the corporations got involved where they were basically consolidating all the extraterrestrial tech. And that's when, it got bigger than the military. And we couldn't trust our own CIA, our own government, because we had so much infiltration from Germany and from European
China
and from
too.
the Americas.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it was, who said, help me out, Dr. J, beware the military-industrial
Eisenhower.
Eisenhower. Dwight said this, and this is everyone knows this, and most people are listening anyway. And when Eisenhower came out and said that, you got to think about what he said there, because that means they have more tech, more money, and more control over this, these high-tech devices and spacecraft, and they're only, slowly leaking out what they want to leak out, which is, the military's fault, the government's fault, to give so much power into the corporations. But at the time, they had to do that because they couldn't trust their own scientists in the military. They couldn't trust their own scientists in the government, at the universities. They were all being infiltrated.
One thing that I think the reason Dwight D. Eisenhower said that, as the Supreme Allied Commander during World War II, so we have not just a president, you have, I don't know if he was a 5-star general, but he at least was a 3-star general. The point is, I think he was locked out, and that's why he gave that warning, for then, which was almost 70 years ago. Wait, 1952. No, he was out of office by 60. So we're looking at 60 years. I can imagine what happened in those 6 decades that, they've gone that much further with the technology. And as you mentioned, they're leaking it slowly at their own pace that they want. But then again, who gave them the power to control our destiny? And that's the biggest problem I have with them. Okay, let me get to some more of these questions here for you. I lost this tab. Let me get back to it. Okay, this is from Apollo 3. If an ET took on a craft from Earth, will you go transdimensional with the craft?
If an ET came back, say it one more time.
If an ET took you on a craft from Earth, will you go transdimensional with the craft?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you get on a craft, it has its own, gravitational force around it. So you're now in your own, bubble. That's why they can go a million miles an hour and make a right-hand turn, because they're in their own gravitational field. And when they go transdimensional, and go into either another dimension, that whole atomic structure stays intact. And with the help of their advanced AI and supercomputers and everything they have on these craft, that it basically changes every atomic structure in your body. It goes against all the physics we know today. So you will go with that craft. The 3D body. Don't forget, when an extraterrestrial comes to this dimension, you must be aware. People are like, well, how do they get shot down? They're so advanced. Well, you have a 4th dimension being and its craft coming into the 3rd dimension. He falls under the scientific laws of the 3rd dimension. All right? When we board a craft in the 3rd dimension and go into the 4th dimension, we are interdimensional beings already. So we will go with that craft, and we will fall under the laws of that fourth dimension.
That makes sense because we'd be enveloped in, if they're traveling via gravity, we'd be enveloped in that gravitational field too. So we'd become part of wherever it goes.
Correct.
This question is from Mindy Widowson. Are there underground cloning bases?
Yes, there are. There's many cloning bases around the planet in England and Australia, and of course here in the United States. As I spoke about earlier, they are making cloning. They're cloning humans. They're cloning all sorts of things. They're mixing ET DNA with human DNA, animal DNA with ET DNA, with human DNA, with plant DNA. But for the most part, yes, cloning has been around for quite some time. It was there way before I got there, and they have cloned people on planet Earth. They've cloned people not only, down in the projects, but there are actual, doppelgangers of everyone, running around the planet. And that's another interesting story. While I was in the projects, I saw some very similar looking people to myself, which startled me, to be quite honest. And they would be in and out of a project I was working on, maybe just for a day or two, but I didn't get a good enough chance to really, examine them. But I've seen many people and the projects that did look very similar in the higher ups. It was too uncanny. And then when I was debriefed on some of the things they were doing in the library and also through casual conversation in the cafeterias and whatnot, that it's definitely happening, and they're doing it, and it's being done, and there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of clones that they have, and they have a little problem with it. I remember back in the day they were talking about having a problem because when they clone someone, the person starts remembering who they were a little bit.
The memories transfer to the clone.
Yeah. So that DNA, remember I told you the hard drive? So they couldn't erase it. They couldn't erase it completely. So people were having total recall. And that happens a lot here on the planet where someone's, thinking they're this person or that person. They're having, this recall. Hey, I was once this person, back in the day. I remember this, whether it's, before their lifetime. I think a lot of this has to do with this illegal cloning that's going on for testing.
This is a super chat question from Esoteric Gold. It reads, what is Emery's most recent information on the white powdered gold, monatomic gold increased in mass or changed, isotopes of gold, healing technology, if that makes any sense? I think that was a merge of 3 or 4 questions, but it was meant as one.
Yeah, there's been a huge deposit of this white powder found in an undisclosed location. I can firsthand tell you, in New Mexico. The project has been abandoned for right now. As far as buying your own Ormus or white gold, there was a great corporation down in Crestone, Blue Water Alchemy, that is no longer there. That after we tested it, it came back as some of the highest concentrations ever. But there's a new company that was just recently. They're not new, actually. They've been around, and it's called A New Alchemy. ANU Alchemy. And by the way, I'm not affiliated with any of these companies. But when people ask me what do I take, that was the next best one at A New Alchemy. It just had an amazing amount of monoatomic elements in there. There are a couple of zeolites that are out there that are really important, because the minerals in your body are so important to keep up, because you're born with these minerals, but there's not really any food or anything that you drink unless you're going to drink 1,000 gallons of seawater to get the right mineral content back to what it was when you were born as a baby. And the reason minerals are so important for our cells is because it keeps us at the right voltage so our body can, cure itself and heal itself. I always tell everyone in Big Pharma, you don't need that secret seed, under the rock in the Amazon. You just need to get your body at the right voltage at the right frequency so it can heal itself. And that's why frequency really is the secret to longevity and good health. But you do need to take some supplementation for that. And monoatomic elements and these ORMs and ORMUS, orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements, are really important to be included into your diet. So I highly recommend that. As far as some, really white powdered gold that I was talking about in my prior shows and on my Patreon, that is yet to be excavated. Now, that is the real pure mana from back in ancient times and ancient beyond Egypt and Egypt times and biblical times. And that white powder has many elements. And when Moses put that powder in with the bread and the frankincense, and people were eating, these biscuits that had the ormus in it, the mana, this pure white gold. And this is a powder. This is not like the gold you go buy at the store for your necklaces. This is a different structure. Well, that elevates your magnetic field. And when he was leading all of those people out and was splitting the water, they talk about,
the Red Sea, yeah, right?
The Red Sea split. Well, that was because of the high vibration that all those people had after ingesting the white mana, the white gold, the ormus. And it is very powerful stuff, the purest, the very pure form. Now, I know at that new alchemy, ANU alchemy, they do sell that for like, I don't know, $100 a gram.
Wow.
The actual powder that they make there. It's not the exact same mana, but it's pretty close to that. But you could read up on it with those guys. I mean, he's a wonderful man, that Dr. Rob, who invented all that, and they have a really strict protocol of how they make it, how they utilize it, and they actually use harmonics by meditating and singing prayer as they make this, which is important to have a really good conscious person. It's like when you pray for your food. It's like when you're making food and people are singing and you're putting this energy as you make it. It actually goes into the food and supercharges the food, and then you eat this food and it supercharges yourself. Your frequency vibe goes up. So I think I really like that product. I hope that answers your question. But we're looking forward in the future, hopefully when someone cuts a check for hundreds of millions of dollars, that we can go back out there and get access to this.
I'm wondering if the mana was also responsible for, this is my question, by the way, I'm breaking rank with the listeners' questions here, is why Moses was literally glowing.
Oh, it quite possibly could. I mean, this also makes you, this creates anti-gravitic type side effects, which also is photonic. And it's very possible that you could give off light with this. They use this stuff in the projects for their anti-gravitic suits and metals that they make. They also it's an energy conductor in itself. It's funny because I have a couple of engineers I work with where they want, why do we have this horrible skiing equipment when we can make the entire shirt or suit or socks, without heating elements in it? The actual fabric is the energy. And, and we're working on that, actually. So it's neat to hear people talk about this because it's photonic, it's full of these electrons and photons that actually can emit light. Your body is always emitting light. You don't see it in all the spectrums, of course, because in the 3D, our eyeballs can only see in certain spectrums. But in other light spectrums, you are actually glowing all the time. So it can happen where you yourself or Moses could have ingested this and had a reaction, and he could have maybe given off light. And giving off light is not a secret. I mean, it's all over the universe, and with especially in the deep seas and the Marianas Trenches, you've seen these fish that have these phyto electric plankton, lightning bugs, this chemical, that emits light. So, I mean, there's a lot of species out there. There's a good documentary. It's called The Light of Night, I think. And that goes over, all the different self-lighting capabilities of not only, people and beings and animals and fish and all this, but there's many types. There's many times we have been on expeditions to inner Earth that the walls were, emitting light. On spacecraft, everything just emits a light. We don't know where the light's coming from because the entire craft is emitting the light. There's no shadow. It's like an operating room light that has a diffraction in there where it does not cast a shadow. So when the surgeon's working, this is actually the wave of the future. We won't have light bulbs. The paint will have the necessary elements in it to create light.
This question, I'm going to correct the grammar in here to make it sound right. And this reads, are there an evil... let me read this properly. Let me read it the way it's written. Is there a really evil species?
I get that question, asked a lot, and I always respond, the most evil species of extraterrestrials that I've ever met are humans.
Yeah.
Humans on Earth.
Yeah, I would think so too.
I hate to say that because we're just not ready yet to go too far amongst the stars, because we have this program that just needs to be broken of divide and conquer and kill, and jealousy and greed and ego, and that doesn't work so well out there. I can tell you that much. And I think that if anything, we are space-faring people, but at the same time, we are ETs as well. We just need to, fix some things and get along so we could be more integrous with each other and drop the greed and ego and be more compassionate and loving. And I know the person's looking for me probably to say something like, "Oh yes, the reptilians with the big teeth and horns are the worst."
Yeah.
But I get it. But I had to say that because I haven't really encountered too many evil extraterrestrials, but there are extraterrestrials that are out there that do not have our best interest, but they're also kept under strict watch and control. There is like a type of galactic parliament out there that is, making sure that planets like ours, are allowed to grow on our own and make our own mistakes, because they were once us, guys. Everyone needs to realize the extraterrestrials were once us, and they had to go through all these trials and tribulations that we're going through now. And a lot of the people here on the planet, you chose to be here at this time, and I'm so glad you're all here. And yeah, it is hell in a handbag, and it can be very rough, but it's a whisper in time, because we are forever and we go on forever, because our energy, this is just a shell we're wearing,
the body, you mean, and our soul is the energy that goes on, right?
That's correct. Exactly, Dr. J. We go on forever and ever and ever. This is a brief time that we have all kind of volunteered to be here, most of us, to help transition, the planet and make sure the truth gets out without it causing too many problems. But for the most part, we're immortal in that way.
This question is from Susan Goodell. It says, please ask Emery about Men in Black.
Oh, the Men in Black. That movie is called so much ruckus. I tell you what. There is a organization out there. I know people think it's the NSA, CIA. They go by another name. I don't know what it is. But there is a couple of organizations out there that are basically, they go out and investigate people and find out, and they do a really good vetting. If someone just calls up and says, "Oh, I saw an ET last night," they know about everyone who has had real ET contact. And they're also, trying to manage the extraterrestrials that do live amongst us. Hundreds of thousands of them are here and look just like you and I. You wouldn't be able to know a difference.
Unless you're receiving that antenna to receive the telepathic messages, right?
Well, right. Well, my team and I, we have a good time when we're in LA and New York, and we're in the crowded streets, and we pick out an ET. We know they're an ET, and we walk up behind them, and we telepathically say, "We know who you are. We know who you are. We know you're not from planet Earth, but we're okay with it. Don't turn around." And then you see them start looking to like the right and the left, and they stop, and they get a little nervous. So that's a fun thing. That's an inside thing my team and I do. If you guys want to have fun with the ETs, please don't harm them if they're just walking around. And you could do this, and it's not hard. Just project that into the crowd and see who turns around and looks at you.
Yeah, wait for the response, right? The physical response.
Wait for the response. Yeah, keep admitting that. Anyway, I shouldn't be teaching you these horrible things that we do for fun, but it is a fun thing, and it's nice to be aware of that.
Okay, this is a good question I meant to ask you, but someone in the chat already beat me to it. Have people traveled farther out into space than we have been told, and are there humans living on other planets in our solar system?
Well, I know we definitely are in orbit. We have a huge salvaging, a big salvaging program going on where we salvage craft and other things that we have destroyed and bring it back to Earth. Now, I cannot verify otherwise that we are having active spacecraft that we have personally built and have gone amongst the stars to different systems. Now, this portal technology I was involved with, I still don't know where we were at. Maybe I was in Middle Earth. Maybe I was on another planet. People are claiming that I have been, but I don't know where I was at. All I can tell you is the atmosphere was pretty much the same. The sky was definitely different. The creatures were different. The flora was different. And we were, collecting samples through these portals. So to say that we went amongst the stars, most likely we have been in a controlled way. But I don't know of any huge craft or anything you see in the movies where everyone's boarded on and they go to Andromeda. Now, you can be in Andromeda right now because you can bilocate. And that's one of the gifts that we have as human beings. We're able to remote view. We're able to bilocate. We're kind of everywhere all the time if you want to be. Now, if you're talking about that, then for sure we've been amongst the stars. But if you're talking about leaving the planet in some sort of craft that we have reverse engineered, and I'm unaware of that.
I think that's what the question was going to. That's what I meant to ask you too. Was essentially the secret space program where we've been farther than the moon, for instance, that they may have not told us, and so you essentially answered it for us. This next user has a question for you, and specific to the user. I'm going to read it to you. It's from OKO. It says, "Why do I remember being born as a hologram? I remember it better than yesterday."
Well, we're all holographic images. We're all made up of photons. So, holograms and holographic technology is something that's used daily in the projects for overlaying. You can overlay a holographic image of a perfect liver onto the liver of a person that's really sick. And because of doing that, the liver will heal itself and reprogram all the cells into new cells. You could have been a holographic person that was maybe made in the project. You may maybe have a recall because you're that well connected to the morphogenic field out there, or the ether, that you recall a different lifetime that you experienced this. There's many different reasons you could be remembering this and seeing this. I don't know which one it could be, but I do believe in people when they come to me and ask me these questions, because it's possible in the science that I know for that to happen.
This is another interesting question that I meant to ask you, but someone's out there reading my mind, literally. This is Miral0150. It says, ask him about astral projection and remote viewing, because I meant to ask you about remote viewing myself. So what is your take on that?
Okay, so the question is, what do I think about remote viewing and astral projection?
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah. I'm a remote viewer, and I astral project often to find out information that's going on around the world and also around the universe, and, where we're going. I believe in both of those techniques. The government spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on the remote viewing programs for the military. Most of my team are remote viewers. We're contracted out by organizations, my teams, to go out and remote view certain areas. We have a very high effective rate of remote viewing. Some of us are in the 90-95%. And if you get 2 remote viewers with the same hit, then it's usually 110% effective that we're correct. If you have a group of remote viewers and, more than 2 get it, you can pretty much be certain that, you're dead on the target. Astral projection is a little different. And for those of you who meditate and know how to controlled leave your physical body behind and go amongst the universe or universes or dimensions, this is also an art that people can be trained on. Anyone can do it. There's no special anyone here on the planet. We're all the same. We all are geared the same way. We just need to learn how to do it. And there's a lot of programs out there that teach astral projection and remote viewing, and I think they're great that people are experimenting with that. Some people get a little bit scared, and there's a fear factor because when you leave your shell, sometimes it can be awkward. Most people's first flight out of the body can seem a little bit awkward, but once you do it over and over and over, you can just close your eyes and be on the top of the pyramids in Giza. You could be on the backside of Mars. You could be, inside the moon. You can be in Andromeda, anywhere, because there is no space and there's no time. You're there all the time. You're everywhere all the time. That's what's so great. Just pick a spot. We, in our groups, I remember when I was vice president for the Centers for Research for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, some of the team members, we would actually meet and have meetings together in places for privacy when we were talking about classified expeditions, and we could just say, hey, we're going to meet at this time, our time. We can set a time, let's say 8 p.m. And if we're all in different parts of the world, we know what that time is, and go into our trance there and actually meet somewhere and have a conversation. And communicate.
Why do you think, for instance, all the different extraterrestrials that you mentioned earlier, and even others that people have seen, like the praying mantis type reptilians, whatever it be, they all seem to have the same shape or same form as us, meaning one head, 2 arms, 2 legs.
The 5-star.
Yeah, why is that?
Yeah, I don't know. That Merkaba, that 5-star, I just think, there is, down at the Planck level of, these, the 5 different geometric shapes, I think there is something to that make us up on a very microcosm. And we share that same, how can I say this, that same architecture. So the architect that was developing us, at that time, call it God or Chi or whatever you like.
Engineers of us, right?
And yeah, the engineers had this in common to make us all around in this similar look. And you're right. It's an amazing thing because there's just an unlimited amount of species amongst the universe. I always tell people, just think of every type of species here on planet evolving billions of years into 2 arms and 2 legs and a head, and there you go. That's how many are out there. And it's more than that. But I'm still, I think it really is an architectural thing. It's an engineered thing. I haven't cracked any code on that, but it makes me feel good to see a being that is similar in that perspective, because it means that there's probably a lot more on the inside that we're also, similar about.
Earlier on, when you talked about the center of or the Hollow Earth, right? We know about Admiral Byrd, that he went to Antarctica and then entered underneath the an opening and got to the Hollow Earth and essentially had a battle with some saucers, and I think he attributed them to be Nazi saucers. I don't know if that part is true or not, but I've always wondered if that's true, because there's Google images that seem to show these massive holes in Antarctica that don't seem to be explained other than being entrances to the Hollow Earth.
Absolutely. Well, there's a civilization under Antarctica that's going to be exposed soon. Of course, they're pillaging it now and throwing artifacts from the Mayans and Egypt in there to confuse the universities once they get access. But it's been there for quite some time. Call it Atlantis, Lemuria, call it whatever. It was definitely a civilization of extraterrestrials and earthbound people that had lived there a very, very long time ago. There is a craft down there that is sticking out of the ice that they're not going to be able to hide much longer. It's funny, Dr. J, because I get asked also, like, when is disclosure going to happen, Emery? Yeah. When are you going to do disclosure? When is it, all going to be brought out? And I see disclosure happening daily on the news and with new insiders and new investigators that are out there. And I think it's great. But the one who's going to really come forward with disclosure is Gaia. And I'm not talking about Gaia TV. I'm talking about Gaia Earth.
Mother Earth.
We're Mother Earth is warming up. This planet's warming up, and it's melting out there in Antarctica. And when that melts completely, or just a little bit more, there's no way they're going to be able to hide these craft that are miles long sticking out of the ice. And, anyone now can get a box satellite if you have, $500,000 and put some 4K cameras up on that and go exo-atmospheric. And I really believe it's going to be Gaia and some really amateur millionaires that have access to satellites that are going to start, filming and taking pictures and, reporting this to us. I think it's a beautiful thing that it is coming out and coming forward. And we do get, every now and then we get a little bit here and there, slips through the media about Antarctica. And, I think it's great that Google Earth, didn't close off everything, as far as, these researchers that go on there and look at the maps. A lot of those things, too, are disinformative and disinformation that they put there, so you're not looking in the right direction, because most of the stuff on the net is disinformation, unfortunately. So we have to be careful where we get our information from and do our due diligence and, just really look for, how credible is it and how many people are talking about it. And if people talk about it, do they end up dead? Or, it's really nice that there's many people that have recorded Google Earth, when it first came out many, many, many years ago. And some of the images now have been blocked, from the public. Well, why are they blocking it? It doesn't make any sense. Is it because it's a top secret installation? Is it because there's a craft sitting in plain sight? And I think, in due time, they're going to have to answer to us about why can't we look at our planet in this area? It's just not fair. But yes, there is definitely, I can tell you firsthand through going through the files and some videos and things in the library, that there are definitely was an ancient civilization there. Um, and there is definitely ET craft there. They have 3D printed giant craft in hangars, simulating the craft that are down under the ice, and do mock entrances where they will walk through these craft as if they were there. So they'll take 5 or 10 years to 3D print an entire craft that they scanned under the ice, and then plan a way to get the craft out of there, or to go through it and take samples and to map it out, which I find very interesting. So there's a lot of models that are underground and in giant hangars that people sometimes, these things slip out. And it's funny because people think, oh my gosh, they're hiding an extraterrestrial craft in Area 51, or underground. I worked at this spot and I saw, the insider says, I saw this giant craft underground. But really, these are models of craft that they have scanned and 3D printed, so they can learn more about it before they actually dig it up, or before they dig down to it to enter the craft.
You mentioned, for instance, Google Earth will not allow us to view certain areas. That's so true. If you try to use Google Earth to look at, say, Area 51 or S4, they literally have that entire area fuzzy. And with regards to Antarctica, Linda Moulton Howe brought 2 government insiders, she calls them Spartan 1 and 2, who talk about what you also mentioned about Antarctica, that as it's melting, you have these massive black, like they look kind of like hallways, or with a giant 30-foot door, more than one. I don't know if it's 2 or 3 or how many are exposed now. But as you said, in the next 5 or 10 years, as more ice melts down there and we start to see what's underneath the ice, because Antarctica, for everyone out there paying attention to us right now, is in fact a landmass. It's not like the Arctic of the North Pole where it's just ice. The South Pole has landmass underneath all that ice. So I'm very excited to see what's going to happen there. Okay. Here's another one for you. This is another super chat question. This reads, if we live forever and can be anywhere at any time, are we all God?
If we can live forever,
say that again. If we live forever and can be anywhere at any time, are we all God?
Yes, we are.
Okay, this is another one from Jacob Kinslow. Is there a way to speed up the ascension process personally?
To speed up the ascension process, you're also speeding up your karmatic process. It can be very painful for some people. I've slept under a pyramid for nearly a decade. Buddha Maitreya, you guys know about him. They make these amazing giant pyramids, and you can look at it up online. But it's called Shambhala Healing Tools. Yeah, Shambhala Healing Tools, I think it's called. Anyway, if you get a real pyramid with the right dimensions and the right crystals and magnets and copper and frequency, along with the right gold layered capstones, you can have an amazing upregulation in your energy field. It's not for everybody though, because you will have to go through a lot of pain and suffering usually to get to that point, which is okay for some, because a lot of people do want to know as much information as you possibly can get while you're here, enjoying this beautiful vacation here on planet Earth. So I think, for me personally, I think that really did it. That really put me over the top for learning a lot spiritually and astrally and etherically. I know it sounds a little crazy. I'm not a crystal swinger, but I do like crystals, and I do like the geometric patterns. There's definitely something to that. Visually, it can activate different codes in your body and help your body transition as well.
A lot of people talk about the Vatican having secrets or holding secrets about extraterrestrials, and there's even some people that suggest that some of the early popes, at least one from maybe 700 AD, maybe earlier than that, was in fact an extraterrestrial and very much looked like Akhenaten. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't, but it's very possible. I definitely believe that can happen, but I don't know. I've heard about that, but I haven't really reviewed anything on that myself specifically, so I can't really comment. I mean, I've been to the Vatican. I've been to their underground facilities. I mean, recently, within the last, 3 years, Dr. J, the Pope came forward and said, extraterrestrials do exist and they're children of God. You know,
that's right. And he also said he'd baptize them. Yeah.
I mean, that's a big thing. The Roman Catholic Church has just said, and they have, just so you guys know, they do have the most amount of money. They have the biggest observatories here in the United States and overseas, and they are well into extraterrestrial phenomena. They have an amazing collection, classified collection down there, way below the catacombs, underneath the Vatican there, that they keep these. They have an underground facility, and where they keep this information of things that they have pillaged and taken from other countries over, hundreds and hundreds of years. And I talk about that on one of my shows on Gaia. Look up that one because that'll blow you away. So it's interesting to see the religious organizations get involved and talk about extraterrestrials, and I think it's great because they know it's coming. They know they're going to have to answer to everybody. Who are these ETs? I've lost a lot of friends and family members when I came forward because they were very hardcore into their religions and didn't want to be associated with me because they said, contacting extraterrestrials is like contacting demons and Satan. Yeah. And there's a lot of people out there that I was close to, and also people listening that, probably are not going to agree with the majority of what I say on here. They don't want to hear it because it goes against the program that they were introduced to. And it's a program. And the way we were raised and the things that we were exposed to is what makes us today. And a lot of that programming is bad programming, unfortunately, that needs to be cleansed and clarified with the truth.
Make sure you check out Dr. J and his amazing channel. He has some incredible interviews coming up on the UFO topic happening right now around the world. Dr. J Radio Live. The link is below.